You're listening to the Wordslinger Podcast, episode 42, Agree, Disagree, or Qualify with Daniel J. Cohen. I totally agree.
If you would like to support this program, or any of Kevin Tomlinson's work, then we invite you to become a reader. Find fiction you will love at kevintomlinson.com/books.
It's the Wordslinger Podcast, where story matters. Build your brand, write your book, redefine who you are. It's all about the story here. What's yours? Now, here's the guy who invented pants optional, Kevin Tomlinson, the Wordslinger.
Wordslinger.
Hey everybody, this is Kevin Tomlinson, the Wordslinger. I don't know who else you were expecting. It's my show. I don't know, though. I may have a guest host someday if I'm going to be stepping out. A couple of people come to mind. I never thought about it before. Now I'm going to have to approach them and say, can you produce a show? We'll try that out. So this week, we're going to be talking to Daniel J. Cohen. He's with a lot of stuff, actually. But the thing we're going to be talking to him about the most is Agree, Disagree, or Qualify, which is I'm on the Facebook group. I know they're going to create a web presence around this. It's kind of an interesting concept. The idea there is to, you know how you go on Facebook and you make a post and then you might get hundreds of people arguing in the comments of that post about the validity of the facts or your political perspective or whatever. I don't know if that happens to you. It happens to me all the time. It doesn't matter what I post. I literally just yesterday posted a comment saying, it doesn't matter what I post, it's going to turn into a debate between my conservative and liberal friends. So I said pie is good, or I like pie, or something like that. And sure enough. So it doesn't really matter what I post. So this format, though, I like. It's agree, disagree, or qualify. It's structured. It has rules. It's kind of an interesting way to avoid trolling, I think. Everybody gets to weigh in, and you have to be able to support your position with facts, with quotes, with links to articles, with videos, whatever. But as long as you can support it, then you can post it. And they kind of keep the vitriolic comments tamped down, so there are no forest fires starting there. I like it. I like it as a format. Now, I have not been actively participating in it. I've been kind of just stalking it and watching because, frankly, I think it takes a lot of energy to support your position on some of these topics. And sometimes I just simply like and agree with what someone else has said. Maybe when I have more time, when I have fewer books to write or something along those lines, maybe I'll hop in and start my own ADQ discussions. Who knows? So, but if you're on Facebook, you can check that out. And I will put a link to that in the show notes. But if you search for the group is called Agree, Disagree, Qualify, or Qualify. Agree, Disagree, or Qualify, all one word. So if you go to facebook.com/groups/agree, disagree, or qualify, that'll get you in there. But you'll find a link to that in the show notes, so that'll make that a little easier. Daniel is also the founder, and he's the lead writer at Redshift Writers, which is, which is more or less the capacity in which I met him. He and I have done some work with a mutual friend of ours, a former show guest, actually, Joanna Takasaki, who's the author of Luau Like a Local, and also we'll call her the showrunner at Global Rights. And, he and I have done some work with her in the past, and we got to know each other. And I really like Daniel. I think he and I could probably, we don't chat enough. It's been a while since we did this interview. I need to just look him up. We probably don't have enough contact with each other. But anyway, I don't want to keep you from this. I think you're going to find this fascinating. And if you do, please leave me some comments. I'd appreciate it, by the way, if you go on iTunes and Stitcher and find the show. You'll have to do this from your computer. I haven't really found a way to do this from mobile yet. But if you go on iTunes, the iTunes store, and find the Wordslinger Podcast, you can rate the show. Give it, I'd appreciate 5 stars if you can. And create a written review, because that really does help people find the show. And if you'd like to support the show or anything I'm doing, the best way to do that, honestly, I have a Patreon campaign. You can find that at wordslingerpodcast.com. But the best way to support me in all this is to just hop on Amazon or Apple Store or something and buy a copy of one of my books. I hope you dig it. So, and if you do, let me know. I'd like to chat with you about it, especially if you like it. If you hate it too, let me know. So, enough blatant self-promotion. We're going to jump into the interview with Daniel J. Cohen. Sorry, Daniel, I just butchered your last name. And you can tell me if you agree, disagree, or, well, I guess you can qualify. So, I will talk to you after the interview. Hey everybody, I'm excited to be here today with a newish friend. We'll call him a new friend, Daniel J. Cohen, and we've actually done a little bit of work together through a mutual associate of ours. But he is the founder and lead writer at Redshift Writers. You can find out more about them at redshiftswriters.com, and that's not the first time I'm going to butcher that domain name. But he's also the founder. You're the founder, right, of Agree, Disagree, or Qualify?
That's correct. I have a co-founder, Joseph Fertitta, but yes, I'm the founder of the group.
Oh, cool. And that's an online community and startup. It's kind of a cool concept, and I don't think I'm going to be able to do it justice. So I'm going to turn it over to you, Daniel, and just let you kind of... First, let's talk about Redshift Writers, and then we'll get into Agree, Disagree, or Qualify. So tell us a little about the company.
Sure. So Redshift Writers is a Houston-based content writing firm that's 100% focused on messaging for businesses. So one way to explain this is we're a content writer's answer to a graphic design firm. What I like to focus on is anything that's inside of the messaging sphere, and it ranges, as I would put it, from the very basics of a message, so your name, slogan, category, mission, like the heart of what you really want to do, all the way out to extensive long-form copy and everything in between. So we don't specialize in an industry, but we specialize in a craft.
Yeah.
So that's hopefully that does that kind of give an overview?
Yeah, I think so. I think so. Any big projects you want to just kind of? Is there anything you can mention, kind of give people an idea of what you guys work on?
Sure. Well, we have a lot of different companies we've worked with in the past. I like working with tech companies because tech companies have sort of that forward-thinking, almost startup mentality, but they have a little bit more of a revenue stream running, so it's we have a little bit more to play with. So an interesting startup, which is actually based out of Hawaii, called Meeting Sift, is one of the groups that we're working with right now, that focuses on software as a service to improve meeting productivity, but also data analytics within a meeting so that enterprises can improve their resource expenditures related to meetings as well. Cool.
All right. All stuff doesn't sound like I'd have a lot of fun doing, but I'm glad there's someone out there playing superhero on that front. So now what we kind of agreed we'd talk about here, and I'm looking forward to it actually, because I've been following you online on Facebook at least, and that's Agree, Disagree, or Qualify. Why don't you tell us a little about what that actually is? Because it's an interesting concept, but I don't quite know how to encapsulate it.
Sure. So I'm going to give you the overview of what we're trying to do and what the mission is, and then I'll go into a little bit of detail about how that's playing out. Agree, Disagree, or Qualify is an online community dedicated to rigorously testing claims in an open, user-generated content forum. And we want to test those claims in line with our core values, which are eager education, utmost respect, and free expression. And the reason that we like to test claims in that context, in accordance with those values, is there are very few online forums that have a not enough trolls problem.
Yeah.
Right? It's not something that people have issues with, that people don't feel free to express themselves on YouTube. It's actually quite the contrary. Everyone feels free to express themselves on YouTube.
Yeah.
What's not happening is there's no moderation. There's nobody there to continue a good, solid, valuable, smart conversation. So we allow people to not only recommend claims and then rigorously test those claims, but also we also moderate the conversation. You wouldn't, for example, and it's interesting because there's a gap between the digital world and what you might call the corporeal world, where you wouldn't allow somebody to scream horrific things in your bar or restaurant. You would throw them out. You'd bounce them from the establishment. Yet when it comes to online discourse, people will let people just say these horrible things, and not just express an opinion that might otherwise be distasteful, but say it in a really insulting and hateful way. Well, we really don't have an interest in that because we think it shuts down common respect, it burns down bridges, and it hampers education. So we set out to find a way that people could openly and freely express the claims that they wanted to, but within a context that was educational and valuable to everybody in the group.
Okay, it's still okay. I've been following a lot of conversations. I like kind of the way you guys introduce a topic. Are there a lot of moderators on there, or is it just the community itself doing this?
We have moderators. Yeah, we have 4 admins. And we take shifts, and we have some moderator guidelines to make things a little bit easier on everybody.
Right.
But we definitely moderate the community. It's a very important part of what we do. And we're not always 100% perfect, just as any judge of conversation might not be. Mm-hmm. And we don't always catch everything, within 3 seconds, but we make a really, really strong effort to do so. If we do miss something, we rectify it as quickly as possible. And if somebody does break guidelines immediately, we've done, I think, a pretty good job of jumping onto it. The other thing is that the online community itself, it somewhat self-moderates, that people will say, hey, cut that out.
Yeah.
That doesn't work for here. And they're just common community members, but they don't if somebody says something that's an insult or hateful, they'll say, hey, that's against guidelines, you shouldn't do it.
Yeah, that's cool. You got a self-correcting system.
Yeah, it's been, and that was kind of an unexpected benefit, but I think it's been good, and it validates the concept that we're really trying to raise the discourse level.
Yeah. I don't know if you're like holding your laptop or something. we get a lot of noise on this end. I just want to let you know.
Oh, okay. Well, I'll try to stabilize here.
Okay. It sounds like you're wrestling over there. So now I've completely lost my train of thought. We'll have to start completely over. You ready? No. So I like. Okay. What are some of the topics, more memorable topics you guys have covered?
It's always when I'm asked for the memorable ones that I forget every single one of them.
Of course, yeah.
But we've had some pretty interesting ones. I think some of the racier ones are focused on family, gender, sexuality, things like that, because those are obviously really hot topics right now.
Yeah.
We had a very memorable thread that got exceptionally heated and then calmed down and came to a better place on Andrew Jackson.
Oh, okay.
And I don't know if you've seen recently, but there's this movement. People have moved to take Jackson off the bill and put other people on. So there are a lot of very heated opinions, one way or the other, on Andrew Jackson. And it sort of went around the bend, and then it came back to a place where everybody kind of saw each other out and heard each other out and were positive toward one another.
Huh. And that's something you don't often see on on forums or on YouTube comments or something. I mean, how do you, other than the fact that you have moderators and the community sort of self-moderating, I mean, what do you think, what do you attribute that kind of success to as far as keeping the trolls at bay?
That's a good question, and it's one that nobody has a magic bullet for, and some of the most successful companies in the world are struggling with. Dick Costolo says that Twitter has a bullying problem and a troll problem, and acknowledged it and says that he has to figure it out. Yeah. I think there are a few things. We curate the content, we don't curate the content, we curate the community members. Yeah. We vet everybody who comes into the community. We seek out what I would call social nodes from really positive places. So if there are other groups with really positive, thoughtful members, we seek out members in those groups and we talk to them and establish a relationship with them. We have sponsored guest claims and events on interesting topics with interesting people in an effort to get other interesting people and thoughtful people engaged in the group. So we're looking for a good community to begin with, and then you combine that with the good guidelines and you get a really positive outcome. The other thing is it's not just that we moderate it within the values, but that we use a very specific type of language. So there, for example, people are really egotistical about apologizing. Not everyone, but a lot of, it's apologizing is kind of one of those things that can throw up this really big social landmine. That I'm not going to apologize because I wasn't wrong, or it's almost like this admission, like you're admitting to like first-degree murder. If you apologize for something, I did it, I apologize. It doesn't really work that way. Sometimes people just need to hear the word "I'm sorry," the words "I'm sorry" or "I apologize," and they'll moderate their behavior, and you can apologize to them even though they were perhaps maybe on the wrong side of the issue.
Yeah.
And it has this very funny effect. And that's just one example of the kind of language we use. So I really think it's how we communicate with people.
Yeah, it's interesting. Well, I think the idea of curating the members probably helps quite a bit. Unfortunately, that's not something that like Twitter or most of the forums can do, not with that kind of volume. I mean, do you see a way for that to scale up?
I do, but you have to be very careful with it. They say that the worst way to describe your startup is to say, we're like some other company, except for whatever it is that you do. But if I had to give an example of that, if I had to use that description, I would say, we feel somewhat akin to Quora. Now, we're focused on claims, so people are actually stating direct claims as opposed to answering questions, and discourse follows. So you could say Quora for claims, but what's interesting about Quora, and they're not able to curate community members as easily, but they did have an early effort to curate their core members and their core social nodes so that whatever rippled from there would hopefully already be inside a really great community. Yeah. So I think you can adjust it pretty easily, but if you just open the floodgates like Twitter did, and especially the format of Twitter where it's these short bites, anybody can do it and anybody can blast out 100 messages without blinking, then it becomes really hard to curate.
Yeah. So, okay, give me a typical ADQ post. Like, how does it work?
So the guidelines state you put ADQ at the beginning of every post. The reason you put ADQ at the beginning of every post is people may not know the purpose of the group or may not have read the guidelines, even though we vetted people and made sure that they read the guidelines, or they might have forgotten it. So you put ADQ at the beginning of the post, which reinforces this claim, concepts, request for position, or Socratic question, whatever you want to call it, to agree, disagree, or qualify with things. It's a reminder. Okay. After that, it's more or less any claim. Now, I will tell you an interesting thing that happened was we, for a while, had some pretty racy claims come through.
Okay.
And, we really are focused on things like education, policy, technology, things like that. And we weren't really looking to turn the forum into that. So we adjusted our guidelines to kind of move away from that, but there were people in the group that we knew still wanted a place to be able to talk about that. So we actually have a divergent group known as ADQ Taboo, which is kind of this repository for the racier stuff. So there's a safe space.
The after dark version of ADQ.
Right. A not safe for work. Don't put it on at 1 o'clock in the afternoon.
Yeah.
But the concept is you would put ADQ, and whatever the claim is. So you could say ADQ, Apple computers will still lead the industry Apple will still lead the innovation technologies industry in 30 years in the United States.
Okay.
You could say something like that. And people would weigh in, and they would put agree, disagree, or qualify, or they would put a D, or a Q when they first weigh in, and then they would, if they optionally, and most people prefer to, provide reasoning for why they agree, disagree, agree or disagree with the claim, or would qualify the claim.
Yeah. Okay. And so, they don't have to present like empirical evidence or anything, right? This is mostly just opinion.
So at the beginning, you don't have to, and in the outset of the claim, in fact, most people just put the claim. However, we have found that if you simply make a claim that is a factual based claim, that it's something that could be tested.
Yeah.
It's in our guidelines to rigorously test claims. So if you make a factual claim and somebody doesn't agree with you, they're probably going to either ask you for a study, present a study. It kind of crowdsources itself out a little bit.
Okay.
So we wind up with quite empirical conversations a lot of times.
Okay. But I mean, in the case of something along the lines of the Apple, Apple's going to lead the innovation curve, for the next 15 years. I mean, would you make that statement and just leave it there raw, or would you say based on this article from Forbes magazine, or otherwise qualify it to begin with?
That's a good question. So there's nothing in the guidelines saying that you have to drop a link, but a lot of people do choose to put in a link, or they'll put some notes in that kind of at the bottom after the claim that sort of justify their position. As long as everybody starts with the claim, it's fair game within the guidelines.
Yeah.
And people vary in terms of what they provide or what they don't provide. Some of the claims are survey based in a lot of ways too. I mean, it's not it's not the most. It's more common for there to be a more general claim, but sometimes it's you have a favorite band and you'll list it here, so you'll get that. Sometimes it kind of breaks up the activity, changes the flow a little bit.
Yeah. Do you have people who their approach is, rather than empirical evidence, use, like you said earlier, more like the Socratic method, like maybe they're presenting a logic-based argument, not necessarily something they can back with facts?
Sure, there are all kinds of claims. There's stuff in a lot of the focus is on policy. So there's discussions of the best way to govern, the purpose of of philosophical concepts. So the purpose of democracy, and a lot of those claims, a lot of the philosophical claims are more formal logic based than say pulling links and pulling research methodologies.
Right. So what is the end game for all this? Like, what are you looking to accomplish with this?
We would like to. I'll put it in two terms. From a practical side, we would love to move to a site and really build out that social node network beyond the limitations of the closed Facebook group.
Yeah. From
a more big picture, sort of fulfillment purpose kind of perspective, we would like to leverage data for good, specifically data on dialogue for purposes of peace and persuasion.
Okay.
Which are really close to one another, actually. Because if one person persuades another person of something, they now agree on something, and people that agree on things a lot of times tend to be a little bit more peaceful toward one another.
True. But then where's the fun in that, really?
Right.
So how do you see this kind of fitting puzzle piece-wise with maybe a few more iconic sites out there like Wikipedia, or sites that are heavily moderated, but not necessarily always accurate?
That's a great question. I think what Wikipedia is doing is actually very good for the world. I think I personally have very strong feelings. I'll be very transparent and upfront about it on some of the issues of Media 2.0. For example, I think Twitter presents a lot of problems that we almost don't have time to unpack, because the information comes in faster than we can assess it a lot of times.
Yeah.
I think there are reasons. I'm personally there for a lot of reasons. I think Twitter's great for comedians. I think it's wonderful for that. I don't think it's so good as a news resource, because I don't think it self-corrects as fast as some others, media types and journalists respectfully believe that it does.
Yeah.
So I'm not a fan of, say, beta journalism. Wikipedia is static. So when something's wrong, and there's a lot of incorrect stuff on Wikipedia, that's for sure, but you can kind of correct it a little bit faster. I really think that we fit in very closely with Quora in terms of what they're trying to accomplish, and I think our information fits very well alongside that. At the same time, it's startup life. So, we're growth hacking and checking out where we're supposed to be and assessing resources all the time. And, where we best fit in today may not be where we best fit in a month.
Yeah. So do you see this as more or less a bridge between, that, like, Twitter does provide a news source. It may not be, that great, but I mean, a lot of people do find out about things first on Twitter before they start exploring them elsewhere. And then, as you said, Wikipedia is very static, but often wrong. Not often. It's wrong. It can be wrong occasionally.
It can be wrong.
But it seems like what you've got here is something that might be able to kind of bridge that gap a little. You feel like that's more or less true, or?
Yes, definitely. I think there's a huge education resource here, not just in terms of public opinion, but in terms of expert opinion being well disseminated. And when something is, when a claim comes out and somebody makes a claim and disseminates information in the format that we have now, and particularly in the format that we're envisioning when we have a little bit better chance to be our own architects, it's not going to disseminate unless it's been vetted. And if you have a good community vetting it, you can vet it pretty fast. Anybody can set up a Wikipedia editor's account. You do have to gain credibility, but anybody can set up the account to begin with. Anybody can retweet something without having to get credibility.
Right.
But in this case, I think we set out to improve discourse and to promote our core values, for people to respect one another, for people to learn, to gain education, and for them to express their thoughts on things. And I think that there's still room for that.
Yeah. Now, obviously, I mean, let's face it. I mean, anytime you have a discussion with someone on anything that might even be considered controversial,
Sure.
Eventually people are going to start getting hacked off of each other and start taking swipes and snipes. So, is that what I've seen so far? Is there's not an out-and-out block on that, but where's the line? Like, how do you determine whether someone's kind of crossing over?
That's a good question. So we have two immediate rules that are really easy to follow. No personal insults and no hate speech. And when we say hate speech, interestingly enough, the First Amendment is a very important political issue to me. It may even be at the top of my own personal list. So I have to explain very carefully what I'm getting at here, because there are people out there who say that hate speech is a term that's used to control speech. If you generalize about people as opposed to arguments, especially if you say something negative about an entire class of people, we're going to mod you for that.
Yeah.
We're not here to create a mouthpiece for racism.
Right.
That's an easy one. I think what you're referring to is the more borderline stuff. So if we're not sure, we might say, are you kidding? Or in a very honest way, are you making a joke right now? We're not, and you always use extra words to clarify exactly what you mean, because it helps. So if you say, are you kidding, and you leave it at that, well, in text, that could come across as, are you kidding?
Yeah, more like an eye roll.
Right, yeah, like, are you joking with me? But if you say, are you kidding? I'm not asking you that in a facetious manner, as it may be difficult to interpret when I'm writing it in text as opposed to speaking it in person. I'm asking you because our guidelines say X, Y, and Z, and I wanted to further investigate that. Please clarify.
Yeah.
Or I'm going to challenge you on the nature of this claim because X, Y, Z.
Yeah. Interesting. Yeah. Well, it sounds very organized. I mean, so organized, it's intimidating to me. I don't know if I could, because I've not yet. I think I've contributed on a couple of topics just to get my feet wet in there. But for the most part, I just kind of enjoy reading the back and forth. There's some, very cogent points that get made on a variety of topics, and the topics are interesting. I mean, the topics range from, all over the map, really. I think you're right, though. Lately, there's been a lot about Mr. or Miss Jenner, whichever pronouns or whichever descriptions qualify.
I believe she prefers to be identified as a woman. So and that's an interesting claim in and of itself.
Yeah.
And, it kind of got teased out in the group, actually.
Yeah, exactly. Because I think a question I would pose, just let's say that I was going to post this. Does it matter what this person's preference is as far as how they're addressed?
So it would be 80.
I would word that better because I'm a writer,
Sure.
so I would write that. Does a person's personal preference matter when it comes to how they will be addressed? I would still write that better, but
Sure. As a claim, right?
Yeah.
I would say that you would get a lot of general feedback about it. I think, regardless of anybody's position on Caitlyn Jenner, I believe is the now chosen name. I think that there's plenty to learn about that. I think that if you were, if you wanted to know that, and I think if you were coming from a place of, of respect in terms of what you wanted to learn, and if you were making an effort to kind of promote to learn and to respect people, that that would probably evolve into a really interesting conversation.
Yeah.
It's obviously a little bit more hot button than
exactly, yeah. And what I think, for me, the interest is, as a researcher, as someone who would want to write something on a particular topic, you see a lot of claims from all over the political spectrum about what's right, what's wrong, who believes this, and who's supporting what. I mean, there's numbers all over the place. But for me, this environment would provide me with a way to get some direct access to actual opinion, but opinion hopefully based on some sort of research or some sort of inside track knowledge. I don't know. I'm all over the map right now, so we'll move on.
Okay.
I look at it as a research tool from my perspective. Do you think that it would be valid as a research tool?
Absolutely. I think it's very valid in terms of in the meta way, in terms of assessing like dialogue, it's exceptionally valid. I think, but even in terms of crowdsourcing knowledge about topics, for example, we have a newly graduated, just titled doctor, who's in the group. And he said I asked him about probably 6 months ago. He said, as I become more and more ingrained in my career, I may not have as much time to post as I previously wanted to. But I will probably use it in the future as a resource so that I can better understand my patients by posting claims, that might be relevant to their lives. So, ADQ, a good number of citizens fail to get their yearly medical checkup because it doesn't cross their mind.
Yeah.
Well, that's a really interesting, that's an interesting motivation or lack thereof for somebody to not go to the doctor, because they just didn't, if you're not sick, you just might not go, but you're still supposed to go. Your doctors still want you to show up. We have another doctor, I may as well stay in the same kind of profession, who pointed out that this person said that they don't vote. And the reason that they don't vote is, they're working 16-hour days trying to save people, and they just don't have room in their head to learn about candidates right now.
Yeah.
So I think there's a lot to learn from it. I think there's a lot of information to gather.
Yeah, that's interesting. Yeah, I may experiment. There's a few. I could see it as a marketing tool in general, just to sort of get a basic, insight to a particular mindset. I don't know. I'm kicking this around now. That's why I'm stumbling over this, by the way, because normally I'm all on top of it. But the fact is, I hadn't quite looked at it from this angle yet. So now I'm wanting to hop in there and try a few things. Hopefully, I don't get moderated.
But no, please do. Please
Yeah.
hop in and post some claims.
Yeah.
I'd love to see what you post.
Yeah, we'll do that. Yeah, it's a little like Jeopardy, by the way. You gotta, instead of phrasing it in the form of a question, you gotta phrase it in the form of a statement. So,
Right.
just gotta
Right.
remember
It's
that.
well, I used to, the way it started was I used to post these things on my Facebook wall, and
Yeah.
I would put agree disagree. The last one I ever posted on my wall was agree disagree or qualify should be its own Facebook group, and people gave agrees and easily met qualified answers, and that was it. So it's interesting kind of the way that it's evolved, but one of the tricky things about it is people do have a very different response to a question than they do to a claim. So if I say, we'll go with like one of the big political fights the last few years. If somebody says, hey, Kevin, what do you think we ought to do with the healthcare system? You might have one response. If I say, Kevin, we should have universal healthcare, you're probably going to give me something. You're going to tell me what you think of that.
Right.
So it's. I think that it lends itself to discourse, but you need to have moderation, or else it can devolve. So I think it's really really positive to get people's ideas as long as you set it up right.
Yeah. Very cool. Yeah. It's to me it seems unique. I don't know. I know Core's been around for a while. It's a different format, but I haven't really seen anything quite like what you guys are building here. So I'm anxious to see how it turns out. So, using this as a source, I mean, how do you think you would cite ADQ as a source?
Oh, like what is it? That
Yeah,
kind
how
of
would you
thing?
refer to it? Because stuff gets buried. I mean, if it's on a Facebook wall, it's
Sure.
sometimes difficult to cite that. I guess you could do a date or time code or something.
Yeah, you could. What's interesting? So there's this great program for anybody who's running a Facebook group called Gridix.
hmm
It's spelled like analytics, but Gridix with a GR.
Okay.
That allows you to track all of your posts, all the post URLs in an Excel sheet. So
Okay.
that would make that a little bit easier because you can actually drop the link. So I guess there are two ways to do it. You could cite it as a web page. Of course, you'd have to have access to it.
Yeah.
Or you could cite the articles that have been linked, and probably cite it almost like a transcript.
Yeah. Interesting. Yeah. Because I, as an author, I'd want to. I don't know. There's a tendency for me to want to be able to grab that and use it in something. So then you get into a whole bunch of like permissions and things like that, I guess. So it's going to be tricky. When you
Sure.
have this built out on the website, you should have put some thought into that. I mean, how does someone come in and cite this as a source?
Sure.
Are you guys looking to build like an engine around this that would allow this to happen exclusively on your site, or are you going to keep it on Facebook?
We would like to build out an engine because we have functionality limitations. We also and one of the key functionality limitations is privacy and data,
Yeah.
which is we can't build. Realistically, we've got things in guidelines that are the guidelines say things along the lines of like, hey, we're protected. We're not sharing. If we're ever going to compile data, we always let people know.
Yeah.
So we had guest author claims. We let people know in the claim before anything else. Hey, we're compiling the data or when we had a live stream claim with a transit conference in January, we let people know that we would collect that information and provide it to the organizations that were involved. Now, that's really more symbolic than anything else because Facebook has the data.
Yeah.
So it's kind of, we're doing our best. We're not going to share something that you say, but they can,
Yeah. Yeah. So when you guys do a more official version, an engine version of this later, are you going to continue the Facebook page as well?
We probably will transition that page and turn it into a different thing.
Yeah.
And that will be one of the kind of startup challenges, right? One of the
Yeah.
unknown ones.
That's a growing pain. I mean, you're in a closed, sort of a walled garden environment right now. So it'll be interesting to see what happens when you sort of branch out there.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to it. I think I would love to. We're reaching out to all kinds of associations and universities right now to discuss different things. Naturally, like I said, it's startup life, so we've got limited resources. So we have to be very careful about where we spend them. But it'll be really interesting to take it to the next level and have forum events and things like that that focus
Yeah.
on what we're doing.
I could see this as being a very valuable tool, like in the university environment.
It would
Go ahead.
right.
Just agreeing.
No,
are you
no,
agreeing, disagreeing, or qualifying?
I 100% agree with you. I unequivocally agree with you. I
Now,
think
see, that would have been a good one. I should have just posted that on ADQ.
Hey, I'll tell you what. Throw it in there, and I'll let's see what I think. No, I think our number one interest, actually, believe it or not, and we have these audiences listed, but it goes in this order. It goes education, policy groups, business and technology groups, and then creatives. So those are kind of the four categories we would probably use it for first. Business is actually a little bit lower down because it's not that you couldn't use it as a business tool. It's not that you couldn't use it as a marketing tool. It's just that if you're, there's a lot of information online, and business professionals and marketing professionals love to talk about business and marketing online environments, right?
Yeah.
But what I really am curious about is people making claims about astrophysics.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Are you guys qualifying is there a qualification process, to build for the authorities speaking on these topics? Do they have to present credentials or something?
No, that's a great question too. We don't, not currently, and I think there is limited functionality. I know that Cora, for example, you have to prove your mettle before you're an expert in a given category, and maybe we ought to explore something like that. When we have an opportunity to. I think some of it is the wheat rises to the top.
Yeah.
So, you can kind of investigate people, and if somebody's really catfishing, it kind of, I think it would probably come out because there's enough of a core. Yes, I know that person. I went to school with this person to know that person A is a doctor, person B is a sergeant at the police department.
Yeah.
Person C is et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah.
So,
of course, my business focuses a lot on authority building, no matter what your career is, and it just kind of it strikes me as this is a great equal opportunity, level playing ground kind of thing, because. And I'm sorry, my cat has decided to visit us on this call. So you were talking about that just before the call, and now I'm doing
it. He's acting like a toddler today. I don't know what's going on. He's chewing everything. But
So, she's got me distracted. But the aspect I think I liked about this most is that because there are a lot of really highly informed individuals out there who don't have official accreditation or anything.
Sure.
So what I liked about this is that one of those guys can make a statement, and it can be qualified by actual experts, and there may be an opportunity there for them to gain some credibility and authority just because of this discourse. Do you think that's that would be technical to build into it, but it would be really interesting to see something like that.
Absolutely. I think I think that people can gain a good reputation in a discourse group for having interesting insights and ideas on specific topics, no matter what they might be. And if you rigorously work to test claims and test ideas, I absolutely agree with you that you can gain authority by doing that, and that if you did a good job and you vetted it and it got through the community and the experts validated it, then generally speaking, you deserve the authority.
Yeah, that's excellent. Okay, all right, that's your homework. Build it.
Okay. I will work on that.
What's interesting though is that there are a lot of coaches and consultants out there. I happen to be one, just for authors, but building authority in these various businesses is pretty important because that's one of the things that pushes it allows you to market a little easier, for one thing. But having a source where I could say, look, go on this site. It's a little bit like have you heard of that? There's a site called Help a Reporter Out, HARO.
Yes, I have.
Okay.
Had some very interesting stories surrounding Haro, actually.
Well, love it or hate it. I mean, it is kind of a useful tool as far as getting your name out there. You know, whatever. Being a contributor has its ups and downs, but I could see this as being something along those lines. If you're not fond of it, that's not really a compliment. But I mean, maybe a little more upscale where, I could say to a client, for example, look, you should go and participate in these forums on these topics so that you can sort of, maybe at some point there's like a scoring system or something,
Sure.
that they could use and they could build their authority on a topic. I could see that as being very useful.
I agree with you, and to be clear, I don't take the Haro comparison as a slight in that respect.
Yeah.
I think the difference is if you go on there and you say something that, I mean, if you go on there and you say something and you know what you're talking about and you know what you're talking about and you give really good advice,
Yeah.
you're going to get kudos for that, and it is going to build your authority, and there's going to be a community there to vet you. So if your clients, and I imagine your clients are good, honest, legitimate people, they're going to gain authority from it, and they're going to share really good ideas with people. So
Yeah.
that sounds legit to me.
I'm very excited about what you've got, growing here. So I'm going to keep an eye on it. I'll probably end up participating just for the fun of it. So
I look forward to it.
How do you how are you looking to market this?
It depends on who we're pushing to and what phase we're in.
Yeah.
As in terms of a user base, we have some user focused kind of growth hacks that we're planning on pulling out when we have gotten the site tested and vetted and ready to roll. In terms of the more what you might call a B2B or business to institution, we have some strategies there as well of partnering up with educational institutions, featuring some of the things that they're doing. We've also got all kinds of product hacks and product growth ideas that we're looking at possibly putting together. There's a whole game system that could surround this. Not a electronic game system, but there's kind of a game element to this, a gamification element to this that we haven't even touched on.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of different little ways we can go about it. One of the things we've done recently is we've started putting a podcast out. So we'll discuss a claim. Our first claim was online trolling in communities is inevitable. We figured we would tackle one that we're used to. And then we also talked about the Dunbar number, which posits that 150 people is the optimum number of people for a community.
Yeah.
So we kind of talked about that a little bit. Our future podcasts are going to focus on less kind of meta claims and more on things that don't have to do with communities.
Yeah. So what's the name of the podcast?
It's ADQ Talk.
Okay. All right. I'll send people your way. It's available on iTunes, I assume.
It is. It's on iTunes. It takes an extra day to populate, but it is on iTunes, and it's on Google Play as well.
Okay. All right. Well, I don't want to soak up any more of your time, Daniel. I appreciate you chatting with me. And I know we mostly talked about agree, disagree, or qualify, but I hope people go and check out Redshift Writers. You guys have a lot to offer there. I know a lot of copywriters and copywriter firms, so it's good to see somebody focusing on the types of things you're focusing on.
Thanks, Kevin.
Most people don't want to go that route.
I really appreciate that. It's good to chat. We should Skype here and there, eh? We should do this.
Definitely.
More often.
Definitely, yeah. And I'm gonna tune into your podcast now and see what that's all about too.
Awesome. I will let people know to check out the Word Slinger while we're at it too.
Please do. I can use all the listeners I can get.
You got it.
Well, everybody, that's going to wrap it up for this interview with Daniel J. Cohen. That's Daniel J. Cohen. Very important you get the J in there. He's the founder and lead writer at Redshift Writers, and he's one of the co-founders of Agree, Disagree, or Qualify, which you can find links to in the show notes. But if you go to Facebook and search that group, you might be able to kind of sniff in there. And you said it's adqtalk.com is the website for that.
Correct. You can find out all about our mission and learn a little bit about what we're working on our blog at adqtalk.com.
Excellent. All right, everybody. We will see you next week. Thanks for tuning in.
Thanks, Kevin.
Well, that was my interview with Daniel J. Cohen. I hope you did one of the three. Did you agree or disagree or qualify? So, I'm gonna beat that joke to death. But that was a great interview actually, and I love the fact that the more I sort of expand my circles out there, and this is called networking, right? But the more I do that, the more really, truly interesting people I meet who, and there's I love meeting entrepreneurs. I love meeting people who have an idea and they not only, sit down and kind of, flesh it out on a napkin somewhere, they take the steps to make it a reality. And not every idea is about making a profit. Some ideas are about exploring, the range of something, pushing the boundaries of an idea or whatever. And I kind of feel like that's what ADQ is all about. And, you can check that out, by the way. There is a website. If you go to, and I should have said that earlier. Sorry about that, guys. And I've just lost the website. It was adqtalk.com, which will also be in the show notes. You can check that out. I also recommend the Facebook community. That seems like to me the heart of it, but what do I know? That's the only thing I've really paid that close of attention to. I never know how to say that properly, so that's the only thing I pay close attention to. There we go. It's the word sling at work, folks. Anyway, I wanted to update everybody. So Kara and I announced this a couple of episodes ago. Did a whole episode all by myself. And we were talking about my wife and I are selling our home, buying an RV, and traveling the country. And, we're still working out details on that. I mean, there's a lot to consider. The great thing about it is our overhead goes way down. So the amount of income we have to worry about also goes down. And, the flip side of that is the income from book sales is slowly starting to get up into the range of, maybe supporting the both of us full time. I would love that. That would be awesome. If the only work I had to worry about was writing and publishing more books, that would be a dream come true for me. So I do appreciate it. If you are one of the few who are going out and buying my books, if you're not, please, I encourage you to go to kevintumlinson.com/books or search for me on your favorite online bookstore. I am available in a few brick and mortar bookstores. My print books are available in a few. Unfortunately, I'm not big enough to attract the attention of Barnes & Noble yet, but maybe one day. I think you can order my books, though, through most bookstores. So if you go in, have them do a search for Kevin Tumlinson or a specific title and see what you get. You should be able to get one if that's the way you prefer to read. Now, I've really shifted to reading almost entirely from ebooks. My Kindle and my iPhone, the Kindle app on my iPhone, and also the Apple, I guess it's the iBooks app. Is that what it's called? I'm not sure. It's the one that comes with the iPhone. But that's kind of man, I sound like a old fogey Luddite all of a sudden. I don't know what's going on. Yesterday I had a conversation with a guest you'll hear on an upcoming show, and found out that I'm old. That I actually fit at 42 years old, man. I fit into the senior demographic for this particular publication. So that's interesting. I don't know how that happened. So anyway, and that's embarrassing. No, it's not embarrassing. It's fine. Whatever. People age. And I'm going to age as gracefully as a word slinger can age. But I want to open it up. First of all, if you do want to support me in what I'm doing, buying my books is my favorite way. If you'll just go to Amazon, go to Apple, go to whatever bookstores you prefer, Kobo, and search for my books and buy copies of my books, that's awesome. There's also the Patreon campaign that I'm running that I still, to this date, need to retweak. But you can make a donation. As little as $1 an episode is really helpful to me. And I really appreciate that. You can find that at wordslingerpodcast.com. There's a Patreon button right there on the page. And enough of that. I occasionally get voicemails and emails asking me questions, especially about publishing, because that's one of my tasks is to do some author coaching. And if you are looking to write a book, you can feel free to hit me up. I can help you do that. Some of the questions I got recently, they're going to require a lot of in-depth exploration. So I don't know quite the direction to go, but because I mean I could do a whole episode on some of these. But one of them was about copyright, and now there's always confusion, but it works out sometimes. See, I have been a professional copywriter for most of my career, and that's copywriter with a W, Copywriter, copywriter. Okay. And there's always confusion because there's also copyright, Copyright, which is the right to ownership of your intellectual property. I got a copyright question, and I don't know if it was based on confusion or not, but since it's about IP for books, I'm going to go ahead and answer it. But it was, the question was just in general, like, what do I do about getting a copyright for my book? And the answer to that actually is you already own the copyright for your book. Now, I'm not an IP lawyer, and if you have questions, you should definitely go and find one and pay a couple $100 or whatever to consult with them. You can register your copyright officially with the Copyright Office and the Library of Congress and that sort of thing. I don't bother doing that. Frankly, I can prove ownership of my work easily enough. The mere fact that I publish it is proof, but you actually you actually automatically hold copyright on your written work the moment you publish it. So, or even before you publish it. At least that's my understanding of it, and I could be completely wrong. But I've talked to quite a few people about this, and that's the consensus. And I've talked to attorneys about this too. So don't think I'm just talking to other authors. I mean, I've talked to actual attorneys casually, of course, because I'm cheap, but I've gotten some sage advice on that topic. So, in essence, you already own your copyright. If you feel there might be some dispute or question, then of course, you can register that copyright. I do not know the rates for that, but if you do a quick search on Google about how to register a copyright, you'll find plenty of resources. LegalZoom may be a resource. You can check that out. and really, I think where that's going to come into play is if you have something that could be considered as the ownership is in question in some way. Like you co-wrote something, or you have a series of interviews within the book that from other people, and maybe they're going to try to claim ownership. If those are the things you're afraid of, then you should definitely cover yourself. I wouldn't blame you in the least. But in general terms, copyright is yours. Now, the other question I was asked was about forming an LLC. And these are all highly technical questions, and so I don't expect most people are going to care about this, but for tax purposes, you could form an LLC. That might help you avoid certain pitfalls. They have their ups and downs, honestly. And I had an LLC for a while. And it was, it was fine, but what you need to pay attention to there is the way you handle taxes is different. If you get an LLC, I'd recommend getting an accountant and pay your taxes quarterly. But there are ways to kind of use an LLC to soften the amount of taxes you have to pay on your income, but especially if you're folding money back into the core business. Again, I would get someone on the horn who is a specialist in that, instead of relying on your friendly neighborhood word slinger for all your advice. But I will say this. I do not currently have an LLC. I'm considering an LLC with my business partner, Nick Thacker, for a few reasons, mostly to help us divide up sort of legal responsibility and tax responsibility for the income of the business. So where I think it comes in handy is if you have more than one individual. So sole proprietorship would be a disadvantage. You could get an LLC to help you divvy things up. Now, there's all kinds of advice out there that might be counter to that. My best advice is talk to somebody in the know, get a really good perspective on this, but consider whether or not you really need one. If you're a sole proprietor, if you're just an author out there publishing your work, probably no need for an LLC. I wouldn't bother. I mean, unless you've just shot up and grown, and maybe you have multiple pen names, or you're doing more than just writing. You're doing courses and you're doing public speaking, and you're trying to keep all that straight. My first advice is find a good accountant, and after that, you might consider the LLC just to give yourself some tax advantages. So that's it. Those are more technical than the type of questions I generally ask. If you're interested, today I published on my blog. If you go to kevintumlinson.com/blog, you'll find this. You can, depending on when you're listening, you may have to scroll down and go into the archives a little, but I just wrote a post about plotting or pantsing. Should you plan your book or just write it or just wing it? And I'll try to put a link to that in the show notes, actually. But that is sort of my take on what it means to plot out a book, like the advantages and disadvantages of actually plotting a book versus pantsing, which is more what I do, which, I know is ironic. But pantsing just means you write by the seat of your pants. So it means that instead of having a full outline, you're actually just discovery writing is what, the technical term for it. You're just writing as you discover what's happening. So go check that out. I think you'll dig it if you are into writing at all. And if you're not, there's probably other things on that site that are good for you too. Go check out kevintumlinson.com. The blog is, it's got its. I'm trying to kind of gear it towards my writing entirely at this point. I'm about to start taking some things off the site, simplifying the site, and making it, just a simple, like as soon as you land there, you know exactly what you're into. So always tinkering with the site. So. Take care of yourselves. I'm glad to have been here with you this week, and hope you're enjoying yourselves. We are so close to getting on the road, and you will not be left behind. You're going to get to hear those adventures as we go. I may add a sort of RV minute to the show or something. So take care of yourselves out there, and I will see you next time.
Word Slinger.